Bernard Tobin here at the Ontario Certified Crop Advisors annual meeting. Talking now to Dr. Larry Brown from Ohio State. Dr. Brown, welcome to Ontario.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, Dr. Brown, you are a drainage specialist, and you've been talking about all aspects of drainage in your presentation here. But one thing that really perked up people's ears is the notion that cover crops may clog tile, plug tile. From your perspective, what are you seeing on that in Ohio?
Well, have gotten calls from across the region, north central region, the last 2 or 3 years, with more questions related to was it the cover crop that did it, or receiving complaints that cover crops are doing this. We don't really have any evidence that cover crops alone are doing this, and we always get calls on corn and beans and sometimes wheat. And so I don't know that we can say it is causing a problem, but we need more information. It'd be good if we could get to the site and get some clarification on exactly what the site conditions were, and we might be able to have a better answer in that regard.
Now, you mentioned, whether it's cover crops or whatever is plugging a drain, it really comes down to maybe, poor installation. Can you talk a little bit about, what you need to do well to sort of keep those tiles flowing?
Well, installation is really important, and if you've got a system that was not installed properly, it may not be maintained on grade during installation, or if the contractor or whoever installed the system did not use manufactured fittings, didn't maintain grade, did some kind of improper connections. Those types of things tend to be the cause of the stoppage, or the flow stoppage or impairment. And so we can almost always, not always, but almost always go back to the field and see that there may be an installation problem of that really caused the condition to occur, and roots begin to accumulate in that location.
Yeah, couplers and fittings you mentioned, that's things you really have to keep an eye on?
Well, using proper couplers, there's a lot of things that some people will do to just cut a hole in a main and stick a lateral into it, not use a manufactured fitting, a coupler, T, those types of things. We advise them to use the manufacturer's T's and fittings, but grade is just as much of a problem. We've got a steady, constant grade, and that means you got to have grade control on your machine and also know how to use that grade control properly.
Now, you mentioned a lot of growers have sent you photos saying, hey, my cover crops are, again, plugging my tile. What have you seen? What are you seeing? What's causing the concern?
Well, when a farmer doesn't see they don't see their drains running, or maybe they get some aerial photos that show big yellow spots in the field, we're impairing the drainage system if we have those plugs, whatever the crop is or whatever the reason. And if we need the drainage at a time during the growing season or before growing season, and it's not flowing properly, we're going to have a poor an impact on the yield, and we may end up with having a very poor yield in that particular part of the field.
Not necessarily whether it's cover crops or whatever. I mean, what crops do end up causing some trouble for tiles?
I don't have any evidence at all about what exact crops do, but the farmers, when they call us, and this is across the region, they'll say, well, I've got corn in this field, or I've got wheat, I've got soybean. We don't see it too often with soybean, or I've got these cover crops, and they're deep-rooted cover crops, or perennial ryegrass years ago. We had a lot of questions on that. Again, we have evidence, anecdotal information from the farmer about what they had growing in the field, but the crop that released the roots that end up plugging the drain may actually be several hundred feet away. So it very likely could be up in the field somewhere, and the roots tend to shear off when they're because they do get in the pipe, but they start to accumulate at these locations where we've got poor fittings and haven't maintained grade, and we've got a little dip in the pipe, those types of things. So it's a cumulative type of problem.
So the bottom line, no evidence that cover crops cause these troubles, but you really do have to make sure you've got those tiles installed properly and well cared for.
That's right. And it may be that we might have some problems, but until we can definitively go in and say that root is a type of cover crop, or that root is actually corn, that tends to be a phenological type of thing that you have to determine in a laboratory, and no one wants to pay for that.
Dr. Brown, thank you so much. Enjoy your trip north.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.